Alright, so I'll talk to you guys then about nutrition and hydration today, and then Mr. Decker wants me to talk about what him and me do together and what kind of services I can provide you guys as well, for those of you that I don't know in this room. So for those of you that don't know me in this room, in the sports community, these are different roles that I hold in my position. I still do work clinically as well, but typically my specialty is going to be sport, as you can see, so I kind of delve into everything. Hockey is going to be one of my major sports for sure. And I pretty much have an athlete or a team across the board from Team Manitoba, so if I don't come talk to your team, I usually have one or two of your athletes as one of my clients, but I do quite a bit of sports work. So when we look at it from a nutrition perspective when it comes to performance for athletes, kind of what Neil was talking to you guys about before as well, is that everything kind of is intertwined, right? So you have a nutrition program, or you should have a nutrition program in place. We have strength and conditioning, which is Neil and Adam. Then you have technical skills where you guys come in place, the coaching staff and things like that. And then altogether that comes in training hours, right? So we're looking at 30 plus, probably more like 40, 50 plus if you think about what's being closer to. But the big component of this we have to think about is that nutrition allows all those other aspects to come together, right? If nutrition isn't in place with eating, drinking properly, doesn't make a difference what they work on for strength and conditioning technical, they're never going to perform their best. It's one aspect that people usually underutilize and undervalue, but it has a huge proponent in every other aspect, and it's actually going to have huge impact on performance at the end of the day. So when we're looking for optimal performance, these are the key aspects we're talking about. We're looking at energy availability. So technically, usually in this population, for the different ages we have, they usually see the younger generation, they're not eating enough, and then once you get up in age group, we're looking at too much or the wrong foods. Especially when it comes to males, we're looking at, Chris, I'm having tons and tons of protein. That's good, but that's not going to do anything for a performance standpoint. We're looking at carbohydrates in this level. That's what performance is about, which also leads us in the other components. So immune system integrity is going to be a huge thing as well. If you're not eating properly, if you're not falling asleep like what Neil was talking a little bit about, doesn't make a difference. Your immune system is going to be usually compromised. So if you go into the games or a big competition, you have a cold, not feeling very well, usually it's going to take 5+ days to get over it. If you take better care of yourself, you're sleeping properly, eating properly, staying hydrated, you can usually get over that 3 days, couple days, which is a huge thing. If you go into a competition and be gone for a week, you want to be able to perform at some point. You don't want to go in there and not be able to perform at your best for the entire time, right? So that plays a huge part as well. Muscle strength and contraction. Everyone always thinks about it as like protein, that kind of stuff with muscle building. That holds true. But at the same time, if you're not eating the right kind of nutrients, not getting enough protein at the right times either, it's also going to affect strength and contraction. Contraction is going to be more so with hydration and sodium levels and electrolyte levels, right? So cramping, things like that, which leads us into hydration, which is a huge thing we'll touch base on in a second. Oxygen availability is a big thing. We're not going to really deal with that so much in Manitoba, but that's the thing we sometimes talk about. And then bone density as well. Bone density is a huge thing for anybody that plays impact sports, female-based sports stuff, gymnastics and things, which is both males and females, but females are a bit more prone at this point in time. So you want to make sure they're getting the right kind of nutrients for bone building. As the body keeps growing, developing, muscles get bigger, stronger, and you need the bones to go with it. You don't want to have your muscles getting larger, stature gets larger at the same time, but your bone density isn't going with you, right? More prone to fractures and breaks that way, so we want to make sure that's going to be there. Which leads us into this. This was developed by the IOC. It's called RED-S, also known as Relative Energy Deficiency in Sport. And it's a combination of a bunch of different countries coming together to see what impacts nutrition or malnutrition to a degree is going to have on the body. And these are the different aspects that it's going to have or hamper, which are going to hamper your performance in the end, right? So every aspect is going to touch the athletes. Obviously, males don't have the menstrual part of it. But otherwise, everything else is going to play a role there. So we're looking at bone health, kidney health, metabolism, blood system, growth and development, psychological, cardiovascular, more so not like heart issue-wise, but more about making sure we get enough oxygen to the body, GI system, and then your immune system at the same time, right? So it plays a huge part in it. Everyone always thinks about, oh, just enough energy, things like that. It's all these other aspects at the same time, right? I know at the end of the day we're looking at performance, but at the same time I still want them to grow and mature and be healthy and safe about it. So we don't want to be impacting other areas of the body because they're not eating properly. We want to make sure they keep maturing and developing as they should be. Those of you that have athletes are more of from a female perspective, just females or males and females, you have to pay attention to this. I won't dwindle into it too much, but it's called the female athlete triad, where if we're going to be malnourished or not enough energy coming in, disordered eating at the same time, it's usually going to lead to issues with the menstrual system as well as bone health and vice versa. If we're not looking after bone health, or if they're missing their period or it's delayed quite a bit, those are going to lead to other issues as well. So we want to make sure those are all going to be in the fold. So if you have any kind of issues or suspicions that might be coming around, I would come touch base with me about that. So when we look at poor nutrition, this is what usually I'm going to find all the time, or this is what it sounds like to me. Poor eating habits is going to be the big one. So like I said, they're usually eating too much, too little, not the right foods. Those are the ones that actually have something in place, are drinking properly. They're not doing it at the right time. They're not compartmentalizing it properly or doing it during the right phases, during training, during competition. So that's going to impact them, which leads us into training benefits get lost. All the strength and conditioning benefits get lost because they're not actually supporting their body properly. Low fatigue, low energy, not going to be able to perform at your best. Leads us into increased risk of energy. And at the bottom, for all these ones here, yes, you don't always want to get bigger, stronger. We want to maintain muscle build for sure. We don't want to have any of it dwindle, get lost. So anytime you're working out, they're playing a sport, doing anything like that, muscles are going to get broken down. So we want to make sure we're helping recover it, help replenish that, build more muscles, make them bigger, stronger. So at least anything you have, we're not losing that foundation, that base. We want to keep it the same. So obviously this is going to lead to poor performance, all these different aspects. So the two main components we want to touch base on are going to be energy and hydration. I'm mostly going to touch on hydration today. So when we look at water, these are all the different components it's going to touch, right? I'm not going to touch base too much on this, but the big thing it's going to affect from a performance standpoint, brain gets impacted by it. Obviously your body does as well. Bones, don't really think about that, but it does. Muscles will be a big one, and your intestines. So when we look at when dehydration does occur, this is what we're looking at. So brain is actually going to take priority in this system right here. So once your body starts getting dehydrated, starts overheating, all the water we need actually is going to make sure the brain function goes where it's supposed to be going. That's what our number one key is going to be, which is going to lead us to body overheating, which is going to lead in turn to stroke, shock, could be death, could be coma as well. We don't want to get that far, but big thing is heat stroke is going to be a big one there as well. The heart starts pumping faster, hence your body's going to start overheating properly. It's not going the way it's supposed to be going, and then the GI system is going to be an issue either way. This one here is going to be a little bit tricky because more often than not, especially with the male athletes, they usually tend to drink way too much water, which leads to the same issues with the GI system as not drinking enough water sometimes. So if you're drinking too much water, you're not going to have constipation, but you're going to get indigestion, you're going to get crampy, you're going to get stomach upset. If you don't drink enough, these are the issues we're going to run into, right? So we want to make sure that's going to be happening as well. So what we're looking at then is this. So everyone always comes to me and thinks it's food. Number one reason for poor performance in sports is going to be hydration status for sure. It's hydration we need to fix first, then it's food. Food, there's a lot more finickiness to it, a lot more individuality to it, whereas in hydration, yes, everyone's a bit different there. It takes a lot less work. Once you put a system into place, it's a lot easier to fix than food-wise. Food's a little bit more complicated that way, and the reason is because we want to try and avoid hypohydration, right? Dehydration, because of these four reasons right here. Your body starts to overheat. That's not good for mental function. Your body starts getting fatigued from that. Cramping occurs. When it occurs from that, poor performance occurs, right? So we want to try and avoid that as much as possible. Like I just said, this is where we're looking at a little bit. Planning comes into play here, and it's going to make it really, really simple for you. So for all your athletes as a team, or the individuals you might really, really struggle with, or those that sweat a lot, we want to start implementing this now, coming up with a thing that they do on training days, competition days, when you guys go away for big tournaments or events and stuff like that. They need to be hydrated the entire time they're there. And it's a pretty simple process. We'll go through it a bit more, but it just takes a little bit of planning and goes a long way. Anybody that doesn't have a water bottle should get a water bottle because they need to be drinking. Any athlete that shows up, doesn't matter the sport, I always want to see them with a water bottle. They need to make it work. Yes, not every sport you can drink like where you're supposed to be drinking with a consistent manner, but they should have a water bottle on hand. So this is where we start getting the questions that usually get asked. How much should an athlete actually drink? This is kind of hard because it is very individual specific, but typically we're going to be looking at just things they need to follow prior to an event and competition and stuff to make sure they kind of stick to where they need to be. We want to try to avoid weight fluctuations as much as we can. The number is actually about 2%. We don't want them to go down 2% and we don't want them to go up 2%. So that's where I said if they overdrink, that's going to lead to issues too. But more often than not, they're under drinking, which is also going to lead to issues. So what we're looking at is you want to try drinking early in exercise in small volumes is much better than attempting to tolerate large volumes at once. Sadly, gentlemen, us guys don't do very well here. Females tend to do this quite well compared to us, where guys tend to try and overcompensate and they'll sit there and I'll watch them and just chugging back half a water bottle. It doesn't work like that. You pretty much want to make sure you're having every 15-20 minutes a good 1 or 2 gulps. Sometimes they're like, what does that mean, Chris? Basically, you're just going like 1, 2, 1, 2. That's 2 cups right there. That's what you're going to get right from that. They don't need to be overcompensating. They don't need to be crushing the water ball to put it in. You want small continuous amounts. That's going to keep you hydrated the entire time. The other part is over here. Good guideline for them to follow is about 2 hours out from competition. Start drinking anywhere from 2 cups to 1 liter. If you're a heavier sweater, if you know some of your athletes are really heavy sweaters, if you play ball and stuff like that, we're going to be more outdoors, then I'm going to suggest going a little bit further out than 2 hours, because they're going to need to start get that fluid intake going much earlier. So 3-4 hours out, they can still drink that 1 liter, maybe even 2 liters up there, but slowly get it in, make themselves go to the bathroom, assess where their hydration level is at, and go from there. Sometimes that 2 hour window isn't big enough. Some sports require a little bit more time. So that brings us into this one right here. So the effects of dehydration on physical performance, kind of what I was just talking about, so you guys can see what I mean. So if we have a weight fluctuation past 2%, one thing to think about here is if you guys want to do any weighing on your own or anything like that, some sports are a little bit easier for you to get an athlete to weigh themselves before and after. 1 kg is equal to 1 liter. So you want to try to make sure their weight doesn't fluctuate at all. So once they come to swimming, for example, they should come in at 150 pounds. They need to leave at 150 pounds. So all you're doing is hydrating to keep your body weight, the consistency the entire time. If we start seeing any drops, this is what starts to happen in performance. So once your weight goes down by 2%, it's impaired thermal regulation, so your body starts overheating, you're going to start sweating more, which leads us into 3%. Muscular endurance time starts going down, that's where cramping starts to occur. Once you get to the 4 to 6% range, muscular deterioration because you're starting to cramp up, electrolytes aren't going there anymore, so water's starting to leave the muscles, endurance time starts going down, heat cramping occurs, and then obviously you want to try and avoid this one as much as possible. This is really severe, that's where heat stroke, and in like severe cases, death and coma occur, but we want to try and stop it from about this point here. Yes, everyone's going to probably get hot, you're going to start sweating, but if we can stop this part from happening, then we're going to win the game. Performance is going to start staying not 100%, but you'll be at like 95 percentile, which is pretty good, right? So how much do athletes actually drink? Typically 30 to 70% of sweat losses are going to be replaced during exercise. So if I was looking for a whole team in here with 20 guys, 10 of them are going to be hydrated, 10 of them aren't, so pretty much 1 and 2 almost all the time. Fluid is going to be an issue for all sports. More often than I come, sometimes I'll go see a team or go see a kid with their parent or whatever, and they do indoor sports, they do sports in water, or places where it's air conditioned, thing, it's not an issue. Doesn't matter where you go, it's always going to be an issue. Yes, if you play outdoors, then humidity and heat's going to be an even bigger issue, so it's going to be a little bit more important, but all sports are going to have hydration issues, so it doesn't matter across the board, dehydration does occur. The reasons why I usually hear from the athletes themselves why they don't do anything or why they don't want to drink enough of it are going to be these 3 factors right here. Anybody that's at a high performance level, focus, this is kind of a double-edged sword. I like the fact that they're all going to be type A athletes. Those are the ones that usually succeed, and I understand you're going to be driven to focus on what you're doing as you should be, like take diving, for example, you need to be focusing on what they're doing. At the same time, we're not talking about food here at this instance. Food, I understand, takes a few minutes, takes a little bit more preparation time to eat it. Fluid literally takes those few seconds to make sure you're hydrating yourself properly. It doesn't go a long way, and there's no reason it shouldn't break your focus. It should become part of your focus. It takes that a little bit of time to make sure, yes, this is part of my thing. This is going to be in my plan. It's not going to hamper performance. It's actually going to increase it because you know once you're hydrated properly, your performance isn't going to dwindle, and it'll actually help your mental concentration. Stomach discomfort, like I said, this can go twofold. If you overdrink, you're going to have those issues, but if you underdrink, your system starts drying out because water is going to be needed elsewhere, which leads to cramping, stomach issues like that occur, and fluid temperature. This one kind of goes without saying, but there's been a lot of studies on this that obviously if it's colder, you're going to be more prone to drinking more of it. I see this as well once we've done some kind of studies and tested a couple athletes a few times. If it's cooler, they tend to drink a lot more of it because they find it more refreshing. They're going to drink more of it. If it's obviously been sitting out in the sun, they don't have a cooler, you're not going to drink as much of it. It's the same thing when we get to, we'll touch base on sports drinks in a bit, but anything that they actually enjoy more, they're going to be more prone to drink more of it. And this is where if they come to me, we're doing a study or anything like that, or testing that day, they're going to say, oh, Chris, I've drank enough today, I feel good, and then actually test them, they're dehydrated. Whereas if it's colder, has a flavor, they tell me the same thing, more often than not, they are actually hydrated because they lead to drinking more of it. The other thing is, need to be conscious of fluid intake as they don't drink enough of it. And the big thing is going to be sodium, which we're going to touch on. So that's why we want to make sure this is coming into play. So what should they drink? They should be thinking things that they actually enjoy. Make sure it's cold. Try and make sure it's flavored during competition and it contains electrolytes. I have nothing against water. water's fantastic, but during competition, unless they're going to partner it up with a snack that's going to have electrolytes, which we'll touch base on, they need to be taking a sports drink, especially for those sports where you have small windows of time. It's the best thing to make sure you're getting fluid intake in, a little bit of sugar and electrolytes at the same time. Nothing else is going to compare to that. Chocolate milk might come into play, but that can lead to stomach upset and stuff, and there's no real reason to have that much sugar. Takes a bit longer to digest because of fat and protein content. That's more of a recovery snack. So during or before, not a huge fan of milk products, but we can take in water as well. You just have to make sure it's going to be partnered up with something that has electrolytes. Another thing, like I said, we want to try and not rely on thirst alone. Once thirst kicks in, or if any of your players, athletes are telling you I'm thirsty, we're pretty much screwed at that point in time because they're already dehydrated. And depending on their level or severity of dehydration, it can take anywhere from 60 minutes all the way up to like 3-4 hours. So depending on where you're at, what sport they're in, that might mean they're not going to perform their best for pretty much the rest of the day, or those major races, major relays and stuff, right? So we want to try and make sure that doesn't happen, which leads us into this one here. I always get the
question. The games will have availability for IVs, like fluid IVs for athletes. Will they have that available to them, fluid IVs, if it's needed during competition?
So that leads me into this one right here. I get it all the time from coaches and lots of parents. When should a sports drink be a better idea, and when is water a better idea? Typically for all the sports, once we start getting into competition time, we're looking at sports drink, right? Anything over an hour, sports drink's gonna be in play. Anything that's greater length, high temperature, high humidity, sports drink's gonna be in play. We're doing training, agility, skills, technical stuff when it's less than an hour or low impact, stuff like that. Water's perfectly fine. I have no issue with that. Typically, we're looking at sports drinks going to be the better option for you during competition, like I said. So I don't like when I see kids going to school with it, drinking there, drinking on the bus. Not a whole lot of reason for that. You could be doing other fluids, water and stuff in particular. But drink, probably your best bang for your buck for sure. Which leads us into this one. Why is that? Lots of studies on it. If I kind of touch base on it, one is going to be flavor. Same thing as temperature, like I said. Lots of studies show once you have something that they actually like drinking that has a flavor rather than just water, which tastes like water, as we all know, they tend to drink more of it without them even consciously thinking about it. So that's, like I said, when we do testing, they're going to come in drinking lots of water. They're doing really well. They drink a sports drink. They tend to drink that extra cup and a half, something like that, which could be make or break them staying in their hydration zone, right? They also have electrolyte content. They have a little bit of sugar too, so it's going to help keep replenishing your carbohydrate content at the same time, depending on which Gatorade Powerade product you're using. So that can go a long way at the same time, right? And sodium is going to help ensure that we retain what we're drinking. If you're just drinking water and you're a heavy sweater, no sodium content coming in, all you're going to do is keep peeing, keep sweating, you're never going to help retain any of it, so it's a losing battle at that point in time. So what you want to look for then is going to be headaches, cramping, sluggishness, if you ever have to go to the bathroom too much, too little, things like that. The big thing we want to pay attention to, like I said, is going to be thirst is going to be a crucial part of it, but obviously you can't be here for this part of it, but you want to make sure that they themselves know urine color is a huge thing as well, and same with the amount. So like I said, if they're going and they're not peeing at all, that's usually not a good sign, but if they're peeing all the time, that usually means they're losing it too, right? At the same time, we want to look at color, so which brings us into this. So as we all know, we typically kind of wake up these colors most of the time. Never this. This is what we want to compete at, is this color right here. This is pure water. So if we take it into this one right here, this one's pure water. This is where you're over hydrating. The only situations that's okay, or pretty much if you know you're going to be out there, it's going to be really hot, really humid, things like that, I'm okay with it because you know you're going to be pretty much more prone to dehydration occurrence, like baseball would be a good one, things like that, they can do it. You don't want to go overboard, or if you know it's going to be a late night, you compete really early in the morning, nothing wrong with overhydrating the night before because you're going to dehydrate overnight, so it's probably going to bring you from, if it looked like this before you go to bed, probably going to bring it into this realm right here sometime when you get in the morning, because what we want to do is make sure we don't wake up like this. If you wake up like this, say 6, 7 o'clock in the village, you have to be there for 9 o'clock or so, 8 o'clock. We're not going to fix that in time before you get there. That's a lot of fluid. We want to make sure it looks more like this in the morning so we can fix it, or preferably like this is what it needs to look like prior to competition. We don't want this at competition time. So what we're kind of looking at then, like I said, is you want to make sure you bring the wheel from 5 all the way back to 1. That's where they need to be. That's kind of really overhydrated, but kind of 1 to 2 right here is where we're looking at. This is where we need to start fixing it, and it's also almost like a time variant at the same time. If you're really, really dehydrated, we're not fixing that in an hour, even 2 hours, just because that's a lot of water volume you have to bring in, which kind of probably going to lead to them cramping up, getting a little annoyed with you as a coach and the management and stuff like that as well. So you want to make sure they have this plan and process so they wake up in this realm over here so it doesn't take as much time to drink in the morning to bring it back to where it needs to be. So is it possible to drink too much? Yes, it is. The big thing here is there's lots of other issues that athletes always name for me, but for my part of it is the fact that if you're drinking too much water, it leads to hyponatremia. So we're going to start pushing salt out of our body. We need salt to help retain the water. So if you start over drinking water or any other kind of fluid, starts pushing it out, you're going to start sweating it out all the time. Maybe pee out a little bit of it too. So like I said, anything you start drinking, we're never going to retain any of it because you're not having any salt coming in. So if that's the case, especially with male athletes, like I said, that's where I'm a huge fan of sports drinks coming in, making sure they have some kind of salt coming in, because if all you're doing is drinking water and all they're doing is drinking a ton of it, you're just pushing salt in, you're not replenishing it with anything, you're not going to withhold any of that on your body, you're never going to get your body back to being hydrated, cooling down. So just to give you a couple of different examples when we do these kind of things, or when I do them, I should say, we went to the Manitoba Hockey Showcase last year and do it every year. They're really pretty much never improving because I never get to work with them, but every single year we do it, and these are like the cream of the crop for guys that are supposed to go get drafted. That's 82% of like 200 plus kids I tested, and they're all not performing at their best for a showcase that they should be wanting to perform at their best. Leads us into Team Manitoba Volleyball. We want to be green, right? We want to have no change occurring. We don't want to be overhydrating. We don't want to be underhydrating. Females do a little bit better typically, but at the same time, still 60% are dehydrated. We look at baseball from last couple of years. It's been improving though. This was probably from about 2 years ago, so it's definitely gotten better from there. And then also sports you don't think about, right? Fencing is going to be one of them. This one actually probably used to be like 70%, but we've improved it quite a bit that way. But just even sports you don't think about too much, but hydration plays a crucial part in it. So as I said, kind of bring it back into summary formation here. So we want to try and make sure they stay in the hydration zone or just a fluid balance. So like I said, weight you don't want to change the entire time. You just want it to stay stable. Some sports, like I said, are going to be a bit more prone to it, but you try to do the best you can. Some sports, it's a bit harder, obviously, to be drinking water when you're supposed to, but try and follow that 15-20 minute rule as best you can. Obviously, swimming, some other sports, kind of do it when you can, but try and take advantage of it. As a team and management staff, if that means that they have to drink and eat when you guys are doing like little talks or pep talks and things like that, or like in the dugout, for example, or other sports like on the bus, the car, like definitely need to take advantage of opportunities when you can, take advantage of the team dynamic, because at the same time, if it's not an individual sport, it's a team sport. If a couple of players in the team aren't able to perform like they can, it usually means the team's not going to perform like it can, right? So you want to try and get them to all buy in that way. It's going to make sure that the team does it best it can. You want to drink before the session, continually in small amounts, during, not over drinking it, and then afterwards as well, because we have to replace it, because more often than not, we're in a couple of competitions a day, so you want to make sure hydration keeps going forward. So this brings us into energy needs here. So what that means is, typically what we're looking at, these aren't your people that go home and just sit on the Xbox all day or watch TV, right? We're looking at high-level athletes. They need a lot of food to support athletic performance. So what we need to be doing is incorporate nutrient-dense foods, which are carbohydrates. We're not looking at veggies here. We're not looking at fats or protein. We're looking at like pasta, rice, breads, hot and cold cereals. We're looking at fruits. We're looking at dairy products. A couple of veggies are going to fall in there, but not very many. So that's the kind of foods we're going to try and increase the amount on. At the same time, post-training exercise snacks and competition should be consumed. Females are going to be more like 30 to 45 grams. Males are going to be more like 60 to 75, 50 in that range there. At the same time, try to take these in at the same time as doing fluids. This will be crucial for those that prefer drinking water. You have to make sure they have something coming in because they need that salt content, like I said. But even if they're doing sports drink, you do need to be getting some kind of a sugar, some kind of a carbohydrate coming in. So you want to try and be able to do it both at the same time, make things easier. This way they're not trying to drink, then trying to eat, then trying to drink, trying to eat. Try to do it at the same time. Makes it much easier for them, less time for them to think about it, a little bit quicker and easier that way. So this leads me into this slide here. I think everyone's probably seen the food guide over the years. Please say yes. I don't believe in it. It's useless for athletes. So we kind of push it into this spectrum right here. Think of it this way. We now break this food into superfood groups. So I do want athletes to still have greens and vegetables. They kind of just need to stick away from them on competition days. What we're relying on is going to be on fruit because we need sugar content from those foods. Energizers are going to be your grains and starches. All your dairy products are going to be your bone builders, bone supporters, so we need to look after that. And then we're also going to have that protein content for recovery part, right? So we're typically going to be building off these three right here for energy-wise. You don't have to go overboard. As you can see though, even for the younger athletes, we're looking at pluses for sure. You definitely need more food than you think of it. So more, like I said, if they're younger, they need more than they're eating. And for the older ones, it's more about honing them into the right foods for what they need to be taking in. So what we're looking at here then is going to be planning is going to be crucial because it's different for training, different for competition. It's also going to be different for before, during, and post competition, and intake amount and timing is going to be a crucial touch base on that. So this is where planning goes a long way. You can't, this isn't the same thing as strength or trying to taper down leading up to competition. These are kind of things you need to start doing now during training, during competitions that aren't quite as important as other ones, because you need to try and put a foothold in place on a different kind of plan so you can follow that same thing, know that this is going to work, know that I've had successes with it, know that I'm going to perform at my best if I follow whatever I drink here, whatever I eat here. You don't want to try new things at competition time. That's never a good sign. I can definitely say I've had some of my athletes and stuff phone me, text me when they've gone places, taken foods that they shouldn't have had or drinks that they shouldn't have had, and they're quite upset because they're feeling sick, they didn't do very well. That's why you need to be doing things that you're more familiar with than trying out new things just before, just a month before. You need to be doing things in place so it becomes more part of your daily rhythm, right? So when we look at pre-competition, we're looking at focus, we want to look at hydration, like I said, and fuel. So at this point in time, the carbohydrates come in. This is where I have to kind of touch base on the whole factor of when it comes to starches, we're looking at trying to cut down on fiber content. So just during competition time, we want to try and make sure that we're not having so much whole grains or doing simple carbohydrates. So like white breads, white pastas, white rices, things like that. We don't want to be doing whole grain, multi-grain, brown and stuff like that, just because fiber for two things can lead to indigestion because it takes a lot longer to break down. So that can lead to them cramping up depending on what sports they're in. At the same time, it gets in the way of you eating enough food. There's been studies out there, and I've even tried it with a team in the past, I won't say which one, actually taking 2 loaves of bread for the guys in the team that I know can eat a lot, and we did it on 2 separate occasions. You can eat almost a whole loaf of white bread. They're never going to make it through a whole thing of multi-grain bread, and we'll switch them around. Same thing happens. They can always eat all the one of white, never going to make it through all the whole grain because it just takes so much longer, it fills you up a little quicker. So if it's one of those things where if you have a sport and you need a lot of calories and you compete all day, you need food that you're going to be able to quickly go through, digest quickly, absorb, have that sugar content, energy available to you, where fiber sometimes just gets in the way, doesn't allow you to eat as much, might lead to cramping too. Like I said, that doesn't matter, like post-competition, end of the day meal, all good. If sadly they didn't win or they do win, afterwards everything's fine. Off season, they need to be eating those kind of foods. During competition, it's just better practice to do it this way. So what we're looking at for pre-competition depends on athletes' own typical rhythms and what they like to do and when they get up for anything that's earlier in the morning. Anything less than 60 minutes, like time from like when they're going to get there, when they're going to eat something, has to be in liquid form. Anything if you're going to be eating in solid form in less than 60 minutes, your body doesn't typically have enough time to digest it, absorb it, make it accessible for you for energy, so we want to try to put it in liquid form. So a smoothie, for example, if you have more like 2 hours, 3 hours, somewhere in there, a smaller meal is going to be an okay idea. So like a small pasta salad, a sandwich, things like that. If we're looking at more like 4 hours plus big meals, that's where you typically see like pro athletes where they're having like big spaghetti dinners, big pastas, things like that, lots of potatoes, things like that. Because that's where you have enough time to eat a lot of it if you need a lot of it. At the same time, break it down, absorb it, go to the bathroom if you need to, then you're able to go compete. As you can also see here, we're looking at competition meals, not a lot of protein in there, not a lot of vegetables, and not a lot of fat, right? We're trying to keep the carbohydrate content quite high, just a little couple other extra things in there for taste and stuff like that as well. But that's what we're going to look at for that part. Then we look at during competition, we're looking at hydration, we touch base on electrolytes and carbohydrates. So this is where you kind of go through the whole debate between sports drink versus water. Like I said, it has a lot to do with your window of time and their personal preference. And if the window of time is really small, I really suggest sports drink. If it's a bit bigger, I'm all about water or sports drink, but this is where if they're going to do water, they have to be able to partner it up with something that's going to have sodium content in it, right? At the same time, they need to eat something because you don't get sugar from water, so we need to make sure we're getting our energy levels back up, so hence we need to eat something at that point in time. So a couple of examples then of 30 to 60 grams, because some people look at me or athletes and go like, that's a lot, Chris. It's actually not that much. It's an English muffin with butter or cheese. If we're looking at a smaller window of time, right, more like 15, 20 minutes, let's take off that butter cheese, let's put more like a jam on there, so it's pretty much just kind of sugar going through your system back in there. Cup of pasta, banana peanut butter, thing that works really well if you want to bump up the calories with banana peanut butter, put on a wrap, put one side peanut butter, one side Nutella, or the whole thing Nutella, roll it up, cut that in half, there you go. You're probably looking at more like 45 grams per each half, so you can have about 90 if you want to. Cold cereals travel really well. We're looking at more like sugary cereals are going to be good here, so we're not looking at, I wouldn't want to go see a group of athletes and they're not having like Bran Buds or something, but if they're having like Cheerios, Lucky Charms, things that have a little bit more sugar content to them, corn pops, stuff like that, that's going to work really well. Chocolate milk's going to go okay if you have somewhere to put it so it can stay cool. Otherwise, I would totally suggest milk to go because it doesn't have to be refrigerated. It does sound weird and it doesn't taste as good when it's not cold, but at the same time, if you're going to be in a more warm environment where you know you're not going to have a cooler readily available, play it safe. Don't go saying it's going to cause like that curdle causes them to get sick, so you don't want to go that way. Yogurt cup works out as well, especially like the single cups. Those travel well, work really well for teams. Any kind of fruit sauces, apple sauces, those kind of things like that. Any kind of fruit that's really small, they can kind of pop in their mouth works well. Grapes, cherries, any kind of berries. I trialed this last year with Team Manitoba girls hockey, and we froze them, which actually increased their intake probably like 5-fold, just because it kind of helps with quenching that desire for something cold, and it makes you feel like you're quenching your thirst. So you do get liquid, you're getting sugar in, and it's really cold, so they tend to eat a lot more. So anywhere you have a cooler, or if you're in an indoor sport, try thinking of freezing them. That works really well as well. You can also have oatmeal protein cookies, which you can make yourself. Google can help you find that one, or I can give it to you too. Granola bars, I have recipes for that. You can buy the store-made ones. This one, try and stick away from like the dip ones and stuff like that. More of a green version, not so much chocolate-based. And then when we look at trail mix, this is more of a tricky question right here. We want to try and go a little bit higher fold on the dehydrated fruit, more the yogurt part, a little bit more of the chocolate to a degree, with just a few nuts and seeds in there. So you don't want to be buying like the big bulk versions you find from the grocery store or Costco or anything like that, because that's way too high in the protein content, way too many nuts. I do want that part in there because that's what's going to give you your salt content. We want to rely more on these ones right here because that's what's going to give you your sugar content, right? So you're better off making your own version from Bulk Barn or something like that. We don't want to go heavy on the protein. And I put this one on here because I do see a lot of the younger ones using this. It does travel really well. You can buy it pre-made, do it yourself. The only issue with that one is kind of go easy on the cheese part of it. It can lead to a little bit of upset with that part, so don't go too heavy with cheese, but it is a good snack and travels really well. So post-competition, same thing, carbohydrates, fluid intake. This is where protein comes into play for sure. This is where you want to have this part of it come in. We don't want to be doing it during, we don't want to be doing it before. You can do small amounts, but you want to make sure it's not a huge proponent of what you're taking in. So what we're looking at, these are the reasons for this. Carbohydrates, we're looking at restoring fuel supplies. Protein helps repair damaged muscle tissues and build new ones. Think of it as in strength and conditioning when you're doing that kind of stuff, or training sessions. We're going to be developing new muscle tissues. During competition, we're basically going to be breaking down muscle tissues, so we want to be able to repair it. So even though you're not lifting weights or doing anything like that, you are being physically mobile, you are doing impact on your body. So no matter across the board, sport-wise, we're going to be breaking down muscle tissue, so protein is going to be needed for recovery. And then we're also looking at rehydration, like I said. So it's very individual dehydration, but for most people, if you don't sweat too much, we can usually get away with about 500 milliliters. If you're a heavy sweater, being outside, probably more like 1,000, if not higher. Lots of the ones that I've tested, especially the ones that do outdoor stuff that way and more cardiovascular-based sports, you're probably looking at more like 1 to 2 liters of water for recovery. So if you're involved in that spectrum, you have to really think about your hydration program too, because you need to be doing that every single time after competition. So that's going to be crucial. And then high-quality protein sources. We're looking at all these ones too. Nuts and seeds fall in here as well. So you can be doing those in recovery time. The big thing is obviously some of these ones from a food safety standpoint, you can't be doing all the time. So we're probably looking more at like dairy products, cottage cheese, yogurt, milk products, things like that. Peanut butter, eggs are going to be okay. Like that's what you're typically going to be going for. I don't put supplements on the list because supplements aren't going to be eaten until they become even higher level or they're older. They have to be definitely 18, 19 plus before there's any reason to be taking that kind of stuff. Otherwise, you want to rely mostly on these and a couple other sources for protein. So the 4 R's, we have to touch base on as well. So Neil kind of broached this topic already about rest. That's a big one for sure, but if you don't do the resting part of it as he was talking about, it doesn't make a difference what you do from a nutrition standpoint. The body needs its downtime to help rehydrate, repair, rebuild, refuel. So we want to make sure we're doing that, and he touched base on the nap part as well. A nap is 30 to 40 minutes, it's not 3-4 hours. So you want to make sure they're not overdoing it that way, but as long as they're getting enough rest in play, the body has time to help recover, recuperate itself, and refuel for the next time out. Which leads me into this diagram right here, just so you guys can see the scientific part of it. So I was talking about every time after a competition, you need to do that 15-20 minute rule. If you start letting it slide, then it's going to have a huge delay, right? So especially for games and stuff like that, we're probably playing multiple games, multiple races a day. As you can see, once you get further down, if you actually had the 15 minutes up here, it's going to have a huge skew. But once we get to 8 hours out, they pretty much become the same, right? So right now and things like that, when they're doing training, having a game, then they have a couple days off, you don't have to follow that 15-20 minute rule because we have more than enough time to rebuild fuel stores before the next training competition day, things like that. But where you have only a couple hours, if not sometimes it's like 30-40 minutes, things like that, we need to be refueling within that 15-20 minute rule. Past that point in time, your body definitely does not start absorbing as much as you can see, and you see we don't get quite as much in. Availability of glycogen to our muscles for them to perform starts dwindling after that point in time. So try and follow that rule as much as I can. So that thing there, usually touch base with athletes or coaches, just the fact that, yes, I know lots of time you're going to have like the post-game, post-race talk and things like that, or breakdown, but if that's going to take long at that point in time, they need to be drinking, need to be fueling at that point in time. You can't delay it past that. Or if they're going to be on a bus, go somewhere, and you guys are going out for a team eating, but like you're going to play again 2-3 hours, they need to be doing something before you guys get on the bus, before you start traveling. So like these things need to be thought out beforehand. Which leads to this depiction right here. So if we're looking at it as in a couple of days out, or even one competition, two competition, the same thing the same day, if you're not taking advantage of that, by day 3, day 4, or by game or competition day 3 or day 4, we're looking at 50% or less of their actual ability to do anything that way. I often get question on this one. Chris, what happens if they do really well for, say, game 1, do badly on game 2, and then they actually do it right on game 3? Yes, you're going to improve things, but you're never going to bring it back up to here. What's going to happen in this situation, they're going to bring it back up to here. So really, it takes 2, 3, 4 hours to bring your stores back up to where they need to go. So you need to have that consistency with it. You don't want to be having a dip or anything that way. It needs to be every single time you perform. If you know it's going to be close together, it has to happen. You can't have one good one, one bad one, one good one. It doesn't work like that. You can't just bring it back up like that. You need time and consistency to make it work.
Excuse me. So if you could pick the number one thing that you just post-game talk, give them that something to eat, what would it be? Would it be just like a bar, like some type of, like one of those kind of snack bars or something like that? What would you give the athlete?
I mean, it has a lot to do with what sports I would be working with.
Soccer or hockey?
Soccer and hockey, typically I'm doing frozen fruits with those two sports. Soccer is going to be fruit for sure because it's really easy to buy in bulk for them. I don't mind bars. Bars you have to be careful with. Certain bars are going to be really high in calories. Certain ones have lots of chocolate, lots of sugar. Like I want sugar, but you don't want to go overboard with it. So like Cliff bars and things work, but there's like a huge gamut of which ones are going to work for you. At the same time, I'm not going to be okay with like dip granola bars. Like you don't need all that chocolate. You just need a typical granola bar, stuff like that. Like crackers work out well too. Sometimes if you have, I know with hockey and stuff, I have lots of my guys throwing like a peanut butter jar into their bag, and then they just bring crackers or whatever else with them, or fruit that day, and then just like licking it off the spoon, eating fruit, having crackers with it. So whatever's going to work best for them is that kind of mentality that way. If you have sports where you're able to actually have a cooler or it's colder, I'm all about making like a bit more of a meal prep and taking a bit of time as like a group or as a team or parents or whatever. Like pasta salads work really good there, like fruits and stuff with like maybe like a sauce in there or whatever. Because all you need, like I said, is a small little cup, like a small thing about the size of your fist. That's all you need. But that's going to be something you can quickly bring on their bag and stuff like that. But if you're going to share as a team, fruit and bars and stuff are the easiest thing to buy as a group.
And fruit, anything in particular?
With fruit, you kind of want to try and stick with like your tropical fruits, and pretty much any of them is going to work. We want to go easy on anything that's going to have a lot of skin or excess to it, right? So you're going to get better bang for your buck from tropical fruit because it's basically just liquid sugar for the most part, where some things you have to actually suck back the skin and fiber and stuff like that, then it kind of takes back a little bit longer, takes a little bit longer to absorb. So I'm all about berries and stuff because they're all really, really close. You think about things like the glycemic index, makes a bit of a difference, but end of the day, like they're all going to be really, really similar for what they need. Like you have to be pretty high level for it to make or break a huge difference between those two. And then this brings us into this one right here. This is actually from the U.S. Swimming Association with Michael Phelps and those fellows. They did a test on them doing high carb choices versus low carb choices. So they put some of them on doing really high fiber meals, and some of them are doing more protein, things like that, not having as much starch. And as you can see, the ones that followed high carb never bottomed out. They kept getting their stores right back to where they needed to. Whereas in the other ones who are doing the two different versions of the diet, never were able to eat enough, never able to get their sugars back where they need to be, and then crashed at the end of the day. So you want to make sure we're not ever having that come into play. So that's why I said sometimes it's just a little bit better off doing the kind of foods I said, doing simple carbohydrates to make sure their stars keep getting brought up on those big competition days, and then go back to your normal eating plan outside of competition. Supplementation, I'll touch base on this one here. The big thing with this one is you need to be of age to be doing it, so you need to be adults for this one, otherwise it could hamper development and stuff as well. At the same time, lots of these products, I shouldn't say lots, but some of them are going to be laced so that they have actually like more of a pseudo effect on the athlete, so they actually see something happen to it, which can lead to any kind of a positive test occurring, right? So you don't want them to be just doing over-the-counter protein products or anything like that, and also they test positive on a random test some point in time. What's that going to do? It's going to destroy the athlete, and sometimes it makes it so that they can't compete ever again, right? So we want to try and stick away from that as much as possible. If they're in a situation where like they're adamant that they're going to do it, there's going to be certain products that are going to be certified, approved by our Olympic committee and stuff that way, so you're not going to test positive, you know you're going to take it, you're going to be safe. At the same time, if they're under 18, 19 years old, you need to actually get the fundamentals into play first before relying on supplementation. For my pro athletes and stuff that way, I use them because yes, they have high calorie intakes of more like 6,000-7,000 calories a day. Their whole day is athletics all day long, whereas in this group isn't quite the same. They're much younger and they don't have that high intake. It's sometimes just easier, and they need to make sure we're getting some kind of dietary supplement into play. That's why we're going to utilize them at this point in time for their age bracket. Want to make sure they get the fundamental baseline in. You're going to get more nutrient value from actually eating it than to try and do it through supplement form, which we kind of look at these examples here. And I always throw these up for examples. This is from the US as well, but something just to think about. So for easy training, off-season kind of part of it that way, this is the kind of thing you're going to see from like mom and pop stores, we see on the radio, things like that. This is what you want to do. This is overall healthy eating, right? A lot of greens, a lot of starches and things like that there. A little bit of your carbohydrates and a little bit of protein. That's what you want to look at. We want to do weight management, as you can see, which is a bit more complicated. We want to cut down on that, but it's a bit more specific there. Then we get into this, we start getting into training again, get a bit more moderate. As you can see, the greens start coming down. Protein doesn't get any larger though. We're just increasing your carbohydrate concentration of the meal. And then as we get into hard train, race day, competition day, carbohydrates make up 50% of your meal. I even probably bend this down even quite a bit more to here. You can have a little bit of this if you really want to. I'm not gonna say like there's no reason to ever have greens, period. But you do want to bring it down quite a bit. And if you get rid of them, that's completely okay, and just put them back into play at the end of the day for like your supper or your final meal. That's all fine. Pretty much want to rely mostly on this food here, and always have your little bit of protein coming in for sure. So in the end of the day, we're looking at meals and fluid replacement requires a little bit of planning. So like I kind of touched base on before, this isn't like other things. You need to take that whole time. You need to take like that 1 year gap to start putting things into place so athletes can start practicing again, their fundamentals in place. Nutrition takes a lot of critiquing and stuff that way, especially for the individual when it comes to energy needs. You can fix things quite a bit, but then at one point in time it comes to a lot of modifications, critiquing it, changing things up, going things like that way, so they get everything into place so that they know this is how it goes. I do really well when I eat this way, drink this way, we're good to go. I don't even have to think about it anymore, right? You don't want to start putting new things into place later on. At the same time, like I said, it needs to happen now during practice and training. I don't like seeing it come in competition or like all of a sudden you read something like 3 weeks out. That's never a good idea. And at the same time, try eating everything together, like I said, right? Don't try and do fluids, food, fluids, food. Does it work that good? Put them together. Makes it so much easier on the athlete. Makes it also easier for planning and development as well. So this is where I'm supposed to talk to you guys about what I can offer you guys, because I work with Adam so much on so many different things. He wants me to touch base on this. So why would you utilize someone like me? We can actually help optimize athletic recruitment and retention. This is where people are like, what? But this part here is actually, this is where you have those athletes come through and they've been kind of like hitting their head against the wall for a bit, or you've always thought to yourself they should be doing a whole lot better than they are. More often than not, that's where nutrition is kind of a key part of that component there. So actually come in and help with that. They do a lot better, they get smaller successes, they start growing as an athlete, they're gonna stay in the program. Some programs we do see athletes drop out and we don't really wanna see that, so if we can help them stay within the program, that's gonna make it better for them as well as the program at the same time. The next line can't be overemphasized. The fact that it's actually me saying it to them from my expertise level rather than a coach, a parent, a manager, another teammate makes a huge difference, right? So it could even be sometimes it's the same message coming from me, but because it's coming from me, they're gonna have greater buy-in that way. So that can lead to a lot of parts that way too, which leads to these other parts here that I actually do the whole part of it with inspiration, motivational talks as well. So it helps build that relationship with and build a bond for those athletes that need more one-on-one time, smaller groups, the whole team. Then I'm gonna be there, they know that I'm there for them. I'm not having any bias. We can start developing nutritional strategies to complement specific sports and the time of the season, right? So this is where I say I can't even talk right now. Periodization is a better choice I'll use right now. And travel and things like that, and putting in different compartments for it so that you can actually see like in season versus off season. If we're traveling, we're doing easy training, we're leading up to competition, post-competition. Those are all different goals from a nutritional aspect, right? You can't eat the same 12 months a year and think you're gonna do the best. It doesn't work like that. At the same time, as they get older, body development goals, right? So lots of the guys want to get bigger, stronger as they get older. Some sports need to be a certain weight class and stuff, make your body look a certain way. We have to do that during off-season, different times. That's different eating habits than competition time, right? So we have to do things like that. At the same time, a recovery process as well. So sometimes you're going to get an athlete coming in post-surgery, got an injury, something like that. That requires different nutritional aspects as well. That can't be the same as everybody else. And training versus competition is huge with this part here. More often than not, I see everyone eats the same all the time. It doesn't work like that. Trainings, we're going to try different things, work with a couple different things, try and manipulate your body if we can. Competitions, where we're going to do something different than that, right? Competition training should not be the exact same all the time. So what we're trying to do here is take me in this consideration, push them into newer habits. More often than not, if I'm not in this situation, or if you have people that are there where the athlete kind of want to have a little bit of pushback against, they're just going to stay with current habits instead of building new ones, which leads me into this slide right here. So instead of having the pushback and fight back, they just kind of stay the same. I wouldn't say failures would be extreme, but they never see those successes that they personally want or you see within them. They just don't typically occur. They typically just stay the same. Races, their game never improves, their speed never occurs, timing's always the same. Whereas we start actually helping them with new habits, get a little bit of growth, a little bit of development, a few smaller successes. We keep bringing them up. You start seeing them grow as an athlete. Everyone's a lot happier that way. They have more buy-in, right? So what happens with that is we can also do these things. Once buy-in occurs, we start getting a little bit more specific with stuff that way. So we can actually start doing hydration testing. We can do scientifically proven stuff. So I start doing the urine-specific gravity stuff where we actually do test it that way. We also do sweat testing and things too. Or we can keep things simple, doing weight testing as well. I do a lot of things when it comes to body manipulation with composition development and weight management. This part here has a lot to do with how the methods are used, timing when it's going to be used, and the relationship as well. This holds true with the part where I said like non-bias. I don't have any other reason to be there other than to do my job. So I'm not sitting there doing it as a coach or as a parent and they're thinking like, why do you want my weight to be this way? Things like that, where sometimes it's going to be a detriment to them actually shifting their body composition around. I'm going to be there, make sure that it's proper for the sport and proper for their body type. At the same time, sometimes athletes want to do some things on their own, do things like that, so I can put those methods in place for that. Educating the athletes as well. So as you get into the older groups where athletes sometimes go away on their own, go live on their own, do competitions, go overseas, that's where they need to be able to look after themselves, be a little more independent and right. So we're looking at, I do grocery tours, do cooking classes, I do snack and recovery classes, so meal prep and stuff like that. It's not the same thing as buying your groceries. There's a little bit more to it with snacking and preparation for certain things that way, so we help with that part of it as well. And at the same time, you're talking about like snacks and stuff. We can go through that whole process with them rather than just cooking classes. This comes down to what do you buy when you're looking for these certain things. How can you make your own things that way? So we can do really individual sport specific parts there as well. Sometimes we come in and there are a couple of key athletes are kind of struggling with a few things. We can do current dietary habits, evaluate that, make new habits like I said, right? We can also evaluate dietary supplements, sports nutrition products for safety, efficacy, and quality. So this is where I come into play for supplements like I said. At the same time, some athletes need to be on certain supplements like calcium, iron, vitamin D, other things of that nature, so we need to make sure they're not taking too much of those kind of things. And more often than not, I see athletes coming in from everything they found from the running room or what they see on TV or magazines. And you want to evaluate it, give an actual honest opinion on, see if it's proper for them, if it's going to actually give them any benefit, right? So make sure they're having a quality product coming in. Counsel athletes for medical conditions. So this is where my expertise comes into play for things with athletes that have diabetes, heart conditions, those who have allergies, celiac disease, bone health issues. We're looking at iron deficiency. Anemia is a really big one in sport as well. So and a GI problem. So these are things like that where we can definitely manipulate the diet to make sure they can still perform, enjoy the sport, even with these different medical conditions, right? And it could create a nutrition policy and procedure and manage a sports nutrition program for those sports that have a healthy eating and body image issues, which sometimes have eating disorders and things like that. I know some sports we need to make sure they hit weight class, they look a certain way and things like that, but there's a safe and proper way of doing it, so we want to make sure it doesn't seem like we're not kind of intruding on them or imposing on them, so we want to make sure you put a plan in place for that so I can help with that part of it. Because what we're trying to do, right, from my standpoint, it takes a long time. set goals, create a plan, make the athletes do the work, mold and adapt it, and then now we have a little success or a large success, and then keep going on from that part, right? It's not something where you can do a small component of it. We have to do everything together, compartmentalize it, put it out there, get it going, so make those goals happen, right? We have to keep growing and growing and growing. So this is where, just because I ended with this, practice, progress, success. I don't want me to touch base on this one because more often than not, like I said, we don't start this early enough. I get lots of teams coming to me just before competitions, just before they leave, and then we don't have enough time to implement it properly. We get buy-in from maybe a small quarter of them. Nutrition is one of those things, as most of you guys are going to know, they have to see something from it, some success from it, to actually stick with it and implement it, which typically takes time. We don't really do that overnight. It doesn't usually occur that way, so we have to start implementing sooner than later. And I always end off with this one here. It's a great quote I heard at one of the seminars I went to over the years, and it kind of makes a lot of sense. So if you guys have any questions, and hydration, nutrition, any of those aspects there,